Recently, I went to Pakistan with some of my family. This was the first time in 8 years that I had gone to my country of origin where most of my extended family resides. I had quite the culture shock there where I realized that a lot of my preconceived notions of the Pakistani people are not quite what they were. And a lot of the observations I made have been quite enlightening and quite impactful, actually, and have helped me to understand, the nature of societies outside the West better. One of the things that I noticed about Pakistani society is the non-atomized nature of it. Now, I do assume that most societies outside of the West, outside of Europe and the United States and Canada and Australasia, would generally speaking be non-atomized. The disastrous effects of technology on social networks and communities have not quite taken root in those countries as they have in the West. Of course, I'm not attacking technology overall. I'm not a Luddite. I wouldn't advocate to go back to a pre technology or pre modern technology era. But undoubtedly, one of the issues, at least with modern forms of technology, is the atomizing and hyper individualizing nature of such technology. And so it's interesting to see a society where those disastrous effects of technology have not taken root. As I mentioned, Pakistan seems to be a society where, for all of its problems, of course, and for all the issues that are without a doubt a part of that society, at the very least, they are not atomized. And in many cases, families and communities are still intact, and broader social networks, which is really interesting, are still intact. There's a very real and organic feel to life there for the few days that I was there, which I haven't felt in England in a very long time. In fact, I don't think I've ever felt that feeling that I had in Pakistan at all in this country. And quite simply, it might be because the network, the social network, is so strong there that one is constantly interacting with people that they know of, their families, close relations or distant relations, friends, or the broader clan, the broader social network. I do come from a line of clans or tribes that originally descend from the Gujarat region who migrated during the partition. And so those communities still are quite well knit and connected in their own various cities where they reside. And in particular, I come from the Hyderabad and Karachi cities, so the communities over there are still quite strong. Most of the extended family networks know each other quite well and they cooperate regularly on certain family events and certain family affairs, let's say. And so that network is still very much alive and thriving. And so you get this really real and organic feeling to life there where people are interacting with each other and people maintain family bonds that you can't find in a lot of Western countries anymore. Now, of course, this isn't to say that there aren't issues, of course, with Pakistani society or that, having extended family networks, they are just 100% positive. That's not what I'm saying. Of course, they have the downsides. But one thing that really can be said that stands out to me about Pakistani society, like I mentioned, is that really and truly they aren't a atomized society and they maintain their social networks, they maintain their extended family networks, they maintain their communities. And that feeling that I got over there, I really can't feel that in England, for example. And so that's really interesting, and that gives a lot of thought, that gives a lot of fruitful thought, really. You know, in our Western societies, we tend to be hyper individualized, and the individual is placed above all else. But I would beg to say that not only does this compromise the collective well being of a society, of families, of communities, it inevitably compromises the happiness of the individual as well. Because without a doubt, social relationships are perhaps the single most important factor for individual happiness. And we tend to define ourselves in terms of the relationships we have with other people and with the things around us, whether it be family, friends, distant relatives, our communities, even things like nature and animals, right? We have a relationship with everything around us. And so, one of the real downsides of our very hyper individualized and hyper atomized society is that, of course, the West has a quite unique insistence on individualism and on individual liberty, which you can't really find elsewhere. And without a doubt, as I've done in past videos, I've extolled the virtues and merits of such a system which emphasizes individual liberty, because social networks with their rigid customs and rules can oftentimes become quite repressive, and the individual is not always able to express himself fully as he wants to and as he ought to in those systems. But one of the disadvantages of a hyper individualized system, especially when pushed to its extreme conclusion and its extreme breaking point, as has been done over the last few decades in the West, is this rapid atomization and breakdown of communities, which inevitably leads to people being deprived of organic relationships. And this deprivation of organic relationships inevitably leads to people losing out on perhaps the main source of fulfillment that they could get from life. And so that's just not to point fingers at any specific society or to say one society is better than another, but just to point out this one specific thing about how non atomized societies have a very real and organic feel to them. And I would argue that not to get rid of individualism or not to get rid of individual liberty, but we do need to bring back stronger communities that can give people relationships which they can really identify with and that could give them fulfillment.